Shazam ISIS Hour. A full hour of exciting adventure with the world's most powerful mortals. Captain Marvel, champion of truth and justice. And ISIS, dedicated foe of evil. Both together in the Shazam ISIS Hour. Chosen from among all others by the immortal elders Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, Mercury, Billy Batson and his mentor travel the highways and byways of the land on a never-ending mission to right wrongs, to develop understanding, and to seek justice for all. In time of dire need, young Billy has been granted the power by the immortals to summon awesome forces at the utterance of a single word. Shazam! A word which transforms him in a flash into the mightiest of mortal beings, Captain Marvel.
I want to thank you, too, for helping my son. Kelly, you come along with me. I have a few words to say to you.
Boy, you tell me to respect the law. What about Captain Marvel?
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. It's your old mentor, John S. Drew here, and we're continuing our journey down the highways and byways of the land, exploring and discussing those episodes of two iconic 70s Saturday morning television shows, Shazam and The Secrets of ISIS. And joining me on this journey, as he's done from the very beginning, is the Big Red Cheese himself, Mr. Richard F. Lee. Hey, Richard.
Hello, Mentor John. How are you this fine podcast day?
I'm fine, but, you know, I think there's a bit of a problem here because I'm seeing double Captain Marvels, and I don't mean Jackson Bostwick and John Davey.
Yeah, I'm seeing doubles too, but that's usually after slugging back a few. Nah, just kidding, folks. I have a different kind of a problem, John. It's you're seeing two Captain Marvels. I'm a victim of identity theft.
You are?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Some jackass put a rubber mask of me running around and taking money, and now I'm going to have to turn myself into the cops.
That rubber mask, I wonder how he managed to make that.
I don't know, but it must be good enough quality to pass for me. But then again, you know, a rubber tire over my head would pass for me too.
So folks, if you didn't get it here, then we're talking about the episode Double Trouble, and you know, as we'll get into this episode here, it may be a John Davey episode, but it's got its roots going back to Jackson Bostwick. It aired on September 27th, 1975. So have we got as far as guest stars on this episode, Richard?
Well, there's Ben Andrews, who plays Pierce Young. There's William Bassett, who plays Bill Ritzie. Actor Ross Elliott plays Sheriff Martin. And Jimmy McNichol as Kelly Martin. And Jack Garner as Phil Shartoff. And Bill Quinn as Larry Frank.
It's quite a big guest list there.
It's a very big cast for this one because we're going to see that this one is going to be contrasted with, say, another episode that we're going to review where there's only two guest cast members. Shazam was funny in that way, and it's unpredictable because some episodes had a lot of guest cast, and others had maybe one or two.
Yeah. And I wonder, does that also have something to do with how good or how bad the episode is?
Stay tuned. These actors have been very busy. And for those who like to look at the careers of different actors, you could find out that some of these actors appeared in a lot of other things that you may have seen back in the 1970s. Ross Elliott, who plays Sheriff Martin, also appeared on the Death Probe episode of The $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
For all those who are fans of $6 Million Man. Jimmy McNichol was well known in his time. He was probably best known as, being the brother of Christy McNichol. Poor Jimmy McNichol had to carve out his own identity. He's still very much around, and he's still in the business, but he was, better known as being the sibling of Christy McNichol. Now, Jack Garner, who plays Philip Shartoff, is none other than Jim Garner's brother from the Rockford Files.
That's one we've never seemed to catch, when we talk about some of the famous people who've appeared on Shazam or ISIS. We missed that one totally.
Yeah, completely. And I didn't know that until John Davey himself told me that. And, of course, the last name Garner is actually a common name, but I never would have made the connection that it's the same actor who played Jim Rockford on the Rockford Files. Now, on another podcast, John, you had mentioned in the past the 6 degrees of Star Trek separation. We don't have that here on the Shazam ISIS podcast, but for those who are interested, Bill Quinn, who plays Mr. Frank, was none other than, drumroll please, Dr. McCoy's father on Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
That's where I recognized him from. Okay. Because he and Ross Elliott were two very familiar faces, but I couldn't place Quinn.
He's played in a lot of things, and they're character actors. They're character actors where there's a book out, John. I forgot exactly the exact title of it, but it's You from That Thing. And that's a reference to, some actors who've been in a lot of things and they're not quite recognized by their name, but you've seen their face. And a lot of these character actors are people that you no doubt have seen in 1970s television.
Right. Wow. So let me tell you a little bit about our writer and director here. Actually, I can't tell you very much, just that the writer is Michael Sutton, and the director is Arnold Lavin, who has done other episodes of Shazam. He'll actually do the next one as well.
Yeah, he came on board this second season, and I think he may have done some ISIS episodes too.
Okay. So how do we start off this episode?
Well, as I begin, I have to begin by letting our audience know that I can't review this episode entirely alone. I must have as my safety blanket or my comfort blanket, none other than, or security blanket is the word I'm looking for. I'm my Mego Captain Marvel action figure to help me get through this. And so now when he starts talking back, that's when we're going to have problems, folks.
Well, isn't that usually when you've had a few slugs?
I'm telling you, there's more to this Diet Coke than they tell you about. So this episode begins with Mr. Shartoff, again played by Jack Garner, as he opens his gas station, where gas is still 61.9 cents a gallon.
Oh, the pain.
Now, if you watch this episode, you gotta look at the surroundings. Don't just look at the characters. Pause and freeze the frame for just a moment and look at the surroundings. Look at the phone booths. Look at the gas station signs that say gas is sold for only 61.9 cents a gallon. If you happen to live in these areas, you'll see how the area has totally changed. So there's a piece of history here.
Captain Marvel, well, it's a pleasure to meet you. What can I do for you?
You can start by opening that door.
What?
Then you can open your safe.
My safe?
Or would you rather I open it my own way?
Whatever you say.
So this sets up an ominous tone, John. It's though here is Captain Marvel who's committing a robbery.
Here's Captain Marvel who's committing a robbery. He's alone. We don't open with the RV and Billy and Mentor. We don't see the change. It's Captain Marvel,
That's right.
And he's not even acting like he should.
You don't start off with something that you might expect from a previous episode. This has not been done before.
Well, how'd it go?
Breathe. Didn't even try to stop me.
And this is a prime example of how, in the second season, some things on Shazam were taken up a big step that you hadn't seen in the first season, that made it stronger, it made it better than what you'd seen earlier. And so you see Captain Marvel rush out of the gas station and into a waiting car. And now this is for those who are from Southern California, near the Ventura Freeway. Now, a lot of incidents involving Captain Marvel in this show seem to happen during the summer in Southern California, but I digress. Now, they're driving off. Now, you have to be tipped off for just a split second, folks. If you're watching this episode, you're thinking, wait a minute, Captain Marvel getting into a car, wouldn't he take off and fly? But instead, you see the driver ask, well, how'd it go? And the passenger takes off his Michael Myers mask. I mean, John Davey Captain Marvel mask, and it's obviously someone else, not the real Captain Marvel. Now, if you look carefully at the edit here, you have John Davies wearing the Captain Marvel costume, of course, and he reaches his hands up to pretend like he's taking off a mask, and then the edit shows the camera goes to the driver and says, well, who's going to argue with Captain Marvel? Then the camera zips back to the other character, and his hands are completely different. It's a different guy, and he's pretending to remove spirit gum off of his face,
right,
as though this is a rubber appliance, but it's not. It's simply a mask.
His head's a different shape too.
Yeah, his head's a different shape, and his body type is completely different. But it's trying to set up for the audience. This is obviously not the real Captain Marvel, because we know that the real Captain Marvel would never rob anything. And that's where the story is going to take us. We want to know what's going to happen next, right, John?
Right. You know, I got to make two quick comments here. Again, we see another staple of the 70s, the evil twin, the bad double, what have you. However it's done, whether it's makeup or whether it's actually someone who is created to be the duplicate, a clone, it's a double. I mean, we seem to have been fascinated with that. Saw it on Spider-Man, saw it on $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, duplicates of people causing trouble and ruining the names of our heroes in here and such. And something I wanted to pick up on that you said about how, doing things different for the second season. We're into the fourth episode here of the second season. We pointed out at the beginning of the second season how they weren't doing new things. This is good. This is a really strong opening, and you're right about that. It really sets things up, all joking aside about the Mike Myers mask and all.
Exactly. Now, as they're taking off, I forgot to mention this part. This is why it's so important to have this on DVD, folks. You need to get a copy of Shazam on DVD from Warner Brothers Archives, because you can't see this on videotape. As they're taking off, you see a sign for Master Charge and Bank AmeriCard. Now, if you know your history, you know that Bank AmeriCard would later become Visa, and Master Charge would become MasterCard.
Right. Yeah.
I throw that out there in part because some people live in the world thinking that they were always known by those names. No, they weren't. As a matter of fact, I was just watching a made-for-television movie about the Manson family, which occurred in 1969, folks. And as they're robbing and plummeting some people, there was a Visa card in the wallet. I'm going, come on. Set did not catch the continuity problem. So that's why when you watch Shazam, you're going to be taken back in time to the 1970s, and you're going to be able to analyze for yourself. Do the sets stand out? Does the story stand out? Does the moral hold up, like what John and I do each time we do a podcast? You're going to be able to analyze these things for yourself. It's a fascinating step backwards in time, nearly 40 years, John.
Yes, I agree. So we cut to the RV. Now we finally get to Billy and Mentor, and we see this is all happening because it's a cut, not a fade or anything like that. That time has passed. So we know something's up. If we didn't figure it out already with our guy removing the mask from his face and such. And we see Billy get a little comedy moment as he's chowing down on a bag of apples, and Mentor all concerned that there'll be none left for him for lunch. And again, we see that trope of Shazam. They're eating.
That's true. There is a trope of Shazam where they are eating a lot. I've never noticed that before, John. We've seen this show a million times and didn't notice that eating is a common theme in Shazam. Mentor and Billy are obviously they're on the road and they are always eating something.
It's all that fresh air. It gets them
exactly.
Yeah.
What else is what they do in Southern California? But anyway, I digress.
The elders. O elders, fleet and strong and wise, appear before my seeking eyes.
All laws should be respected, Billy, even those that seem unfair. Soon, you may have to help someone learn that this is so.
I'll do what I can. It shouldn't be too difficult.
It won't be easy, Billy. Sometimes it's hard to practice what you preach.
Could you explain what you mean?
Goodbye, Billy.
What do you think the elders meant by that, Mentor? I'm not going to break any laws.
I don't know, Billy. But it is true that many people find it hard to practice what they preach.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And before Billy can get any straight answers out of him, they're like, "Goodbye, Billy," and we're gone.
Have you noticed that as the show has worn on, that the elders seem to be far more terse with Billy each time?
Yes. I said this before the show, and I'll say it again. I would love to get just a rant of Billy saying, "Son of a beep," you know?
Well, I think Billy has had it by now. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
He's had enough of this stuff. Okay, so next we see, in the next scene, we see Kelly Martin, played by none other than Jimmy McNichol, hop a fence that clearly says to keep out and there's no trespassing. Then he takes a saddle to ride a horse named Corky. Now, also, Billy and Mentor happen to come along, and they next hunt for a place to have a picnic. Now, Kelly takes off on the horse meantime, and it's spooked by another stock-footed snake. Although different from the one we saw in the first season episode, The Brothers.
Well,
the one thing I have to admire, though, about Shazam, you're never in true danger because if there's a snake around, you can be assured it's stock-footed snake.
Well, most of the animals, won't say all, but most of the animals we see are usually stock footage. Oh, man. So, Mentor wants to picnic in that area, but Billy sees the keep out sign, so he's like, we'll stay clear. But he also sees...
Help! Help!
That boy's in trouble.
And this time, instead of, as we saw in, which episode was it, with Captain Marvel saving the girl from the horse?
Yes, that's the athlete.
The athlete. Okay, instead of getting Jackson running alongside and grabbing the girl off the horse, we get a flying sequence as Marvel lands in front of the horse and, I guess, speaks to it.
Captain Marvel!
You all right, son?
Yeah, thanks to you.
I would think if something linked in front of the horse as it's charging, it would buck the kid off.
Looks like she sprained her leg running.
Hope she's not hurt bad.
She'll have to be walked back very slowly. 2 friends of mine will be along shortly to give you a hand. You stay and keep an eye on her.
Do I really have to?
Any reason why you can't?
No, I guess not.
Okay. So long, son.
Huh.
So maybe he could talk to the animals like Wonder Woman did.
Yeah. Now, this is what I found fascinating about this. Captain Marvel jumps in front of the horse. He doesn't take the rider off like we would see in other episodes. But when he does, he says, easy. This is not the only time we're going to see John Davies' Captain Marvel do this. We're going to see him do it again.
Really?
Yes, we will. Wow. It's going to be seen in a future episode, not very far from now, as a matter of fact, that he will confront an animal and just say easy, like calm down, and that's what he does. He never engages the animal itself.
And it's interesting to note that the boy, isn't interested in sticking around, but he does. I mean, but he's hesitant at first.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a good setup because we know that the boy is obviously consciously aware that he's not supposed to be riding this horse. So he knows and has already a guilty conscience about riding this horse when he's not supposed to.
Right. Exactly. And plus, not only that, he's injured the horse.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He's injured the horse, and that's going to be something that'll play out in just a little bit later.
Yep.
So what happens in the next scene here? We see the imposter, the fake Captain Marvel, hop out of the getaway car without... Now, check it out. For those who are viewers, he doesn't have the mask on. He took that off. He doesn't have the cape on anymore, and he doesn't have the boots.
Right.
When he hops out of the car, he has his own shoes on. He's wearing his own shoes, probably because the studio did not want to give him the only other pair that was on the set. When Jackson got relieved of duty on Shazam, when he got fired, he was given a complete costume with one of the pairs of boots. There were 2 pairs, he said, and then he got the best pair. So John Davy has the other pair, obviously, and these are still first season costumes.
Wait a minute.
All these costumes.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. So Jackson did walk away with a costume.
Yes, he did. He was given a costume.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he got to choose the best set of boots. There were 2 sets. He picked the best pair.
Now, see, I'm sorry. I'm playing this as like coming in and like not knowing what the deal is and everything. That just seems very odd if you've just been fired and they go, help yourself to the costume, but you can never wear it. You can never go on personal appearances, or was that allowed?
From what I understand, he was allowed to do personal appearances, but there was a dispute over who would send him out. Was it Filmation or was another agency going to do it? Filmation did not want him being out there in the costume in public, but I think that in his settlement through the Screen Actors Guild, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, because I never asked him about this, I think he had the right to wear the costume in public. In fact, there is a well-circulated picture of Jackson wearing the costume with Kirk Allen, who was the first on-screen Superman. And they were together at a convention with C.C. Beck, the creator of Shazam. And that's a classic photograph. And Jackson told me about how that picture was set up and so on. But he's wearing the full costume. And he always looked great in the costume. He looked like Captain Marvel. And so I think he told me there were about maybe 5 of these costumes made, but only 2 pairs of boots. So by the time the show got into the 3rd season, there were more costumes made. And you can tell that the costumes in the 3rd season looked a little tiny bit different than what we saw in seasons 1 and 2. Just a tiny bit. You have to really catch it with your eye to see what the differences are. The lightning bolt is shaped a tiny smidgen bit different, and it's no longer gold, it's more yellow.
Interesting.
And they had to do Billy shirts, too, the red and gold trim Billy Batson shirts, because after repeated washings, those did fade.
Right.
And so the studio Western costume, no doubt, was constructed to make more Billy shirts.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, though. You know, I mean, it makes sense. He gets new costumes too, but
yeah, and it makes sense. And John Davy, when the show ended, he received a costume as well. And we don't know. No one knows where the other costumes ended up. No one knows. No one knows where the RV ended up. So,
Well, the RV would be like a holy grail to find that thing.
That particular RV, although there's plenty of open road motorhomes of that same model out there still, but yeah, to find the original RV would be the holy grail for sure, or the attorney phone inside of it.
Right.
So here, Ritzy, who is the imposter, getting back to the story, he gets out of the car to go hide the costume. And he said, the way he phrases it, must be in the script, I'm going to hide this mask, or these clothes and this wig and mask. So he distinguishes the wig and the mask from each other. That's a strange choice of words in the script, because we're going to hear Mentor say the same thing. Because when you buy a head mask, like they sold a lot of those in the 1970s,
right?
Ben Cooper and others, they don't look realistic at all. But the hair is attached to the mask, and both Mentor and the Ritzy character distinguish between the mask and the wig. All right, whatever. So he takes the costume and says he wants to hide it and find out what the news is in town. Now, this minor point is to set up the finding of the imposter's costume later, where Mentor will parrot the same words that Ritzy said about the mask and the wig.
Do you notice that with this episode, too, there's a lot of little key points that set up for later actions in the show?
Yes, I actually like that. I like that in storytelling, because if it sets it up well, and if you're able to remember what was set up before, it comes together and it pays off.
Right. Yeah.
And that's good writing. I think that's very good writing.
I agree. Yeah. So meanwhile, we cut back to Kelly, and he's being chastised by the owner of the horse, Larry Frank, who is upset that Kelly took the horse in the first place. And of course, because the horse was injured, and he gives out to him saying, just because you're the son of the sheriff doesn't mean you can do anything you want. And Mentor has to remind the boy that he has to respect the law. And this, again, here we go, another little, it's like these little seeds and stuff. Kelly talks about 2 men who were sneaking around Frank's property the week before when he was there. So, again, keep that in mind because that's going to play up later on as well. Mentor will remember that.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But also, as we see Mr. Frank, this is the only time we're going to see him.
Yes.
We're not going to see him later on in the episode at all. He's going to be referred to. He's an important character off screen. He's the owner of this horse that Kelly's been borrowing without permission. And we know that he's a real character here, but this is the only time we're going to see him. One of the things he does is he chastises him, like you say. He tells Kelly that he has no right to be trespassing, and he notices that the poor horse is injured. Now, I'm almost expecting, in a way, knowing that this actor played Dr. McCoy's father, was in the infamous euthanasia scene in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. I'm expecting Mr. Frank to say, "Release me." Okay, that's what happens when you watch way too many movies and television shows and know what actor has been in what show. But
right.
I digress again. So, now they go to the sheriff's station.
I was just coming out to get you. Mr. Frank called. He said you've been riding Corky again.
Why does everybody have to make such a big deal about it?
Kelly, that horse could have been seriously hurt. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I've got other things on my mind. Captain Marvel is wanted for robbery.
What?
He robbed Phil Shartoff's station this morning. Got away with $400.
But that can't be.
Captain Marvel. No wonder he was in a hurry to leave.
What's that?
Captain Marvel helped save your son from getting hurt. There must be some mistake. He would never rob anybody.
Well, I hope you're right. But as of the moment, there's a warrant out for his arrest.
And Billy says, well, we need to do our own investigation. We need to find out who the real thief is. But Mentor intervenes and says, no, Captain Marvel should turn himself in. It's like a suggestion at first.
It won't be easy, Billy. Sometimes it's hard to practice what you preach.
You're right.
Shazam!
Well, here I go.
Now, Kelly, we've been through this before. In the future, I want you to stay away from...
Captain Marvel!
Sheriff, I understand there's a warrant out for me.
That's right.
Well, I didn't rob that station, but I'm placing myself in your custody.
You mean you're turning yourself in?
That's right, Kelly. I'm prepared to pay whatever bail is set.
I haven't got the right to set there. Judge Harris Smith will be out of town till tomorrow. I don't think you'd rob that station myself, but I think you're going to have to spend the night in my jail.
Well, I guess there's nothing else I can do.
This is a cool transformation sequence here. So Captain Marvel, Billy becomes Captain Marvel early a second time in this episode, and we're not going to see Billy Batson until the very end, John.
Yeah, now this is another interesting thing. I mean, Michael Gray is out of play, and I didn't mean to make a joke like a rhyme there, but but yeah, I mean, it's now from this point on, John Davey is headlining the show.
Yes. Now, of course, politics aside and whatnot, it was Jackson's idea to have Captain Marvel in the second season do something different, like rob banks or something. Make Captain Marvel out to be a villain, and it turns out to be an imposter is impersonating him. That was his idea, and that idea was done in this script.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Jackson was fired and was not able to play Captain Marvel in this episode to play out his idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So Marvel must spend the night in jail. And let me tell you, that jail has seen some better days when they get putting him in there. The bars are clearly bent, and the door looks like it's about to come off its hinges as it sort of wobbles.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. But
the camera did not, thank God, to show us what the toilet looked like. I doubt it's been cleaned in a while, okay, folks?
And Kelly, though, is confused by all this because he's like, why would Marvel give himself up and not just go look for the crooks? And, that's when Mentor remembers what Kelly said about the two strangers on Frank's property. So he decides to call Mr. Frank, and again, we don't see the phone call. It's just all done off screen and everything, and ask permission to search the area.
Exactly, and that's a great way to, it's, again, economy of the writing, where you don't have to bring in the guest actor to do that. I mean, it's very easy to do. It's a throwaway line, and it saves a lot of time and a lot of money. Now, here's something else that we need to consider. Someone brought this to my attention once when talking about this episode, Double Trouble, said that the arrest of a superhero, turning oneself into jail, if he's a well-known superhero, that would have garnered a lot of media attention. And unfortunately, this show didn't have the budget to hire the actors and the extras needed for a massive press conference and a bunch of people in shock over Captain Marvel being accused of a crime, which would have been neat.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this wasn't the budget for it. But it is dramatic to see Captain Marvel behind bars.
Well, you know what they could have done? Because this is a small town, more of a rural area. There could have been something even to the effect of the sheriff just coming in and saying, I've started fielding calls from the press, and by morning there'll probably be news trucks here to cover, Captain Marvel's, time in jail or what have you. And at least that would have been a good cover-up, because he's obviously, as we know, he's not going to spend that long in jail anyway.
Oh, no. He'll get out of jail after the next commercial break.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one thing here they get right, where Mentor offers to set the bail, or Mentor offers to pay the bail, no matter what amount is set, and the sheriff points out that the sheriff does not have the authority to set bail. He has to wait for the judge because the judge is out of town. That's true. That's quite accurate, and that's true even today. So when an officer does an arrest and there's a warrant, as far as bail is concerned, that's up to a judge to set. You have to make a first appearance and get arraigned for that kind of thing. So I throw that little legal point out there for everybody. I'm sure that was so interesting for you to know. So what happens? Next we see Ritzy come back to the shed, that little broken down cabin that's on Mr. Frank's property, to tell the news that the authorities think that Captain Marvel did the crime all right, but that the real Captain Marvel turned himself in. So if he puts on that Marvel suit, he's going to give himself away.
Yeah.
However, this makes it out to be a little better. They might have a better idea in mind now. Ritzy has a new crime in mind since Captain Marvel is out of the way and can't get at them. Yeah. What is it going to be, John? What is it going to be? What can they possibly do that Captain Marvel now is out of the way that they can get away with?
Well, you have to wait, because then we go to commercial and it's the end of Act 1.
There's a lot that went on in Act 1, John.
There was, though. There was. No, that see, and again, this really was the pacing. I mean, even the acting. And, it's something else I noticed, because I've gone ahead with a few episodes with John Davey, and heck, even, his first episode he got more dialogue than Jackson did. And I mean, obviously he's going to get it here, but in general. And I remember as a kid watching the show and how disappointed I was when Jackson was gone, and who is this guy, and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, to me, this is the thing, though, how I made the distinction as a kid between the two. And it's no fault of either of them. But to me, Jackson looked more the real Captain Marvel. But to me, because John Davey got more lines, John was the better actor. As a kid, looking at it, because they'd go Shazam, and along would come Jackson. He'd do something heroic. He'd say a few words. He'd do the moral at the end, but he'd fly off, and that was it. It was done. It was like, here's the magic genie. Now get out of here. But John had more screen time. And I could appreciate as a kid going, yeah, maybe he don't look like Captain Marvel, but he's a damn sight better actor.
Well, he had some experience leading up to this. And as John Davey will tell us, he's had a lot of acting parts on, again, the Rockford Files, which we've been talked about before. I think he was in Barnaby Jones. He was in any number of motion pictures, a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. You can look them up on his IMDb page. He was in a lot of motion pictures, even with brief little scenes. So he knew how to deliver lines. But it was up to the scriptwriters to put together their stories, of course.
Right.
And for whatever reason, the scriptwriters in the second and third seasons chose to give Captain Marvel more lines and a longer appearance in each episode. because in any one episode of Shazam for the first season, you don't see Jackson's Captain Marvel on screen as much as you're seeing John in this particular episode.
Right. So we come back from Act 2, and what happens?
Well, Sheriff Martin doesn't believe Captain Marvel committed the crime, but he can't let him out. He says that if it were up to me, I'd let you out of here. And once again, that's actually quite correct, but we're going to see how the scriptwriter, as good as the scriptwriter as he was, messes that up in a little bit. We're going to see that. But Sheriff Martin says that he doesn't believe Captain Marvel committed the crime. He can't let him out. He says he's going to go and bring lunch. Now, he knows that the bars can't keep Captain Marvel, but he promises to be there when he gets back. And, of course, the sheriff jokingly says, well, I don't think we can keep you in here against your will.
And meanwhile, while he goes off to go get lunch and everything, we cut to, and this is the economy of the writing, no time spent with Frank asking him permission. He clearly gave it to them. There's Mentor and Kelly. And I thought this was interesting, that, one, the sheriff allowed them to go off on their own and do this investigation. Two, that Mentor is taking a kid with him to a potential dangerous situation. But fortunately for the two of them, they do find the hideout, and they also see that the crooks have split. But there are footprints, and the footprints lead them to the costume and the rubber mask.
Exactly. And, well, it hasn't stopped Scooby-Doo, right? How many times has the Mystery Machine Gang got kids in danger? But, we digress yet again. We love doing that on this podcast. So they see footprints that you and I can't see, John.
Well, yeah. Even with the DVDs.
Even with the DVDs. But then it magically leads them to the costume and, as you say, a mask and a wig. Again, the mask and the wig are kept separately. But no boots! Where are the boots? There's no boots! What did those yellow boots magically disappear? You have to have the boots in order to complete the costume.
You sure a young Richard Lee wasn't touring the set at the time and just snuck off with them?
No, but I do have to admit, I was looking all over the place to find boots that looked like that to make a Halloween costume. Okay, I admit it. Oh Lord, I have a meeting with a psychologist next week to talk about this.
But meanwhile, our two crooks are making their way. We see them in their truck, their green truck, and they're heading to Iverson Mine. The signs say, and I got to admit, when I first saw that, because you had a note about what their plans were at that point, and I'm like thinking, I don't remember them actually saying that, other than they were having the big score or something like that. And when I saw the mine, I thought maybe they were going to rob the mine itself.
Interesting. But it's a way of foreshadowing, because they're going off to Iverson Mine, and now we're going to transition back to Mentor and Kelly going back to the jail to see Captain Marvel, to show him the stolen costume, or wherever the costume came from,
right?
And the mask. And the sheriff happens to walk in after a long walk, because he got stranded, okay? So Sheriff Martin comes back to tell them he was ripped off himself. He stopped to help two men in a pickup. They took his keys, ripped wires out of his patrol car, and left him stranded. And it took 2 hours to get back. No wonder it took so long for lunch to arrive, okay? I have my mind on the lunch here, okay? Isn't Captain Marvel hungry by now? But this again is economy of the writing, because you don't see the incident where the two men do this,
right? And
I think it would have been a little too violent for a kid show to show these two guys overpowering a police officer.
Yeah,
you might throw that out there, because police officers on a show like this can't be shown in a bad light, because the show purposely was written to show that the superheroes always help law enforcement, and law enforcement is not, at the end of the day, crime never pays. And you don't want to see bad guys doing the things that Sheriff Martin is verbally describing to the audience. It's not just economy of writing, it's for being practical. You don't want to expose kids to that kind of stuff. But if this were real life, I think those two bad guys would probably put a slug in his head, I'm just saying, folks. What about his sidearm? He's a sheriff, and he's got to be armed, right? Well, you would have to assume that they took his gun, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, Convinced that Captain Marvel is innocent because of the discovery of the disguise, Sheriff Martin wants to let Captain Marvel out, but he can't because he doesn't have keys.
Well, I can take care of that. With your permission.
You've got it.
So Captain Marvel bends the bars and lets himself out with Sheriff Martin's permission. Now that's the part where there's a payoff where Sheriff Martin figures out that the Iverson mine is where they must have gone because it's a Friday and the payroll is delivered on Friday.
Sheriff, those men who took your keys, they must know that you were coming back here before long, so whatever they're up to is probably happening right now.
Careful, what?
What is it?
Frank Iverson's mine. It's Friday. The payroll is delivered on Friday.
That must be their target.
It's logical.
Then there is no time to lose. What kind of a truck were they driving?
A green pickup.
First, I'll restore the bars.
So Captain Marvel restores the bars in a reverse shot since it's obvious they forgot to film it initially. But this isn't the bad part, John.
10,000.
10,000.
What's the funny?
I was just thinking about Captain Marvel sitting in his jail cell.
Remember when, in a prior scene where Sheriff Martin says, I believe you're innocent, I know you didn't do it. If I had my way, I'd let you out. Once the suspect is in custody, you can't let him out. You have to get a court order.
Hey, relax. Don't have to drive so fast, they won't be after us for hours.
So it was set up earlier in the prior scene.
Green pickup. There it is.
That the judge is out of town until the next day, so they can't set bail yet.
Hey, what was that? It's Captain Marvel.
But you can't let him out either without a court order.
I'll see if I can shake him off this truck.
And here's another thing. In this part where it's established in this episode that it's a Friday, did you know that one of the things that cops do to really get back at people who they don't really like
It's no use. He's holding fast.
is to arrest them on a Friday afternoon?
Really?
Yes, because 72-hour hold, they let you go. In fact, that was even established in a $6 Million Man episode. 72 hours is as long as we can hold him.
He's taking off. He's flying.
The weekend, Saturday and Sunday, are not counted in the 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
So you can keep a guy in jail for 5 days.
Wow.
Come on, drive faster.
I'm trying.
So, but Captain Marvel gets out, which we want him to do. We don't want him staying there.
Right.
He's flying against us. We're stopped.
And again, this is another great little bit of economy of writing. We don't need to see the violence of it all. We just see that it's happened. The crooks have made off with the money. They've gotten $10,000 in payroll money.
He's pulling us back to town.
$10,000 is a lot of cash on a payroll.
There's nothing I can do, nothing.
So yes, so Marvel is on the way, and he swoops down, lands on the back of the truck. You know, the driver tries to shake him off, but he manages to hang on. Now, I wasn't sure about this. Was the rope already tied, or did Marvel tie the rope to something on the back of the truck before taking off?
Yeah, that's another thing. The rope, he ties it onto a little hook in the bed of the truck.
Right.
So there's a convenient rope already there.
Well, yeah.
Stay right there. Yeah, they're the ones that took my keys. That must be the pair I got that notice on last week. Bill Ritzy and Pierce Young. Thank you, Captain Marvel. I couldn't have done it without you.
My pleasure, Sheriff.
All right, you two, into the van. Hurry up.
See, Kelly? I was careful not to break the law. Everything worked out just the right way.
I understand. I hope Mr. Frank will give me another chance.
You'll never know until you ask him, Kelly.
Goodbye, Captain Marvel.
Good luck, Kelly.
Now, this is where, in sci-fi fantasy, all laws of physics go out the window. Because there's no way that you're going to put a rope on a hook like that and be able to stop a truck going at 60 miles an hour. It's not going to happen. That's going to snap right off.
Right.
Oh, well. But
there's a lot of things here with this ending scene that are a little bit of a letdown of what is a really strong episode. You know, like you say, the whole thing with the rope. I noticed, why is the rear view, like the back window, covered? You know,
right.
And is it so that we can't see Marvel in the background flying? Because it would have to be, I guess, a blue screen thing or something?
Yes, that's another thing. The curtain is in the background of their getaway car for the entire episode.
Yeah.
It has no purpose. And there are trucks that go around with curtains like that, but it has really no purpose other than to hide the fact that you don't want to see Captain Marvel in the bed of the truck. Now, if you watch this scene carefully, where it's Captain Marvel hooking up the rope, and he's going to take off and he's going to start flying, and the bad guys are looking in the back, and they pull the curtain aside a little bit.
A little bit.
You can tell nobody's in there.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
When Captain Marvel should be there. Oh, gosh. But, you know, I like it. It's actually pretty exciting. I really like this.
It's exciting, but it's just those things like that, or like when he actually stops the truck, starts pulling it back, and they come to a stop themselves. Mentor pulls up with the RV with the sheriff. And the sheriff is like really casual. He's like, all right, boys. You know, like it's almost like he caught two teenagers instead, just drag racing or something, instead of two guys who just robbed. And one would assume, you know, they had some sort of weapon on them and walking away with $10,000. He's casual. He has no gun on them. He doesn't cuff them. You know, it's just, and he's like, and get in the RV with Mentor, who did not get out of the RV.
Yeah.
Just...
And Captain Marvel takes off. That's what's so funny about it. Now, I think it could have been done a little better with a chain instead of a rope, and they could have had the chain connected to the trailer hitch or something like that. That would have been a little more plausible and believable.
Yeah.
But it is an exciting scene. Captain Marvel stops the truck, and he flies it back.
Yeah.
What I really like about this scene, though, actually, is the point of view shot where the camera is zeroing in high above the road.
Yes.
And comes up on the pickup truck.
Yeah, I like that too.
That's a great point of view shot. It puts you in the action. You're looking through the eyes of Captain Marvel as he's flying and swooping down. It's an effective illusion. It really looks really good. I thought they filmed it quite fine like that, because the camera is going really fast, looking a far distance down to the ground on the road, and it's as though you're flying along with Captain Marvel himself.
Oh, yeah,
that's a great shot. Great cinematography.
Oh, it is. And they've done that on a couple of other occasions, too, in the series so far. And then there's, of course, been the other ones where also, like, the tracking shots where people are watching Marvel, so it feels like, you know, you're looking up there. And it's not just a simple matter of they look up. They are actually, like, sort of panning along with him as he's flying. And the sound, you know, that's one thing. You know, they couldn't do... you know, a lot of real flying shots in the sense of even the stuff with where John and Jackson both were on the flatbed truck and everything like that. They couldn't do a lot of those. So they were really clever with the cinematography in giving you the illusion of flight.
Exactly. They were really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that you buy into. I actually think these flying sequences are better than the George Reeves Superman show.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
So what happens here, he also waves goodbye to Kelly and takes off. Why does he take off for, John? Shouldn't he be around, since Mentor is driving dangerous fugitives in the RV who aren't handcuffed? And what if the $10,000 payroll, you got to go back to Iverson Mine and give it back to them? I'm sure they're waiting for it. And do we assume Mentor grabbed it out of the pickup? You don't just leave $10,000 in the front seat. How does he even know there's $10,000 in there in the front seat? Oh, gosh.
Oh.
That's a little careless. You got two fugitives. They could be armed. And if the sheriff doesn't have his firearm on him, then you would have to think that both of those guys have his gun, right?
Right.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man. And the thing also is just, and it's cutesy, I guess, you know, because then Marvel has taken off and Kelly's wondering where Billy is, who just shows up at the right moment with the bag of apples.
That's true.
You know.
Oh, here I am.
Oh, all we needed was Billy to sort of look at the camera and wink or something.
Which is almost what he does here. Like, I'm never around at the right time.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's not as obvious as it is in ISIS that we see in some episodes where Rick Mason and Cindy Lee will always say something to Andrea Thomas like, "It seems like you're never around when ISIS is," which is an obvious wink to the audience.
Right.
And here it's a little more subtle because you have Michael Gray laughing. It seems like I'm never around at the right time, and he's laughing, and he knows he's in on the joke, but it's not obvious in my opinion. Right. I think they're not playing it as much as the ISIS episodes.
No, I agree. Now the thing is, looking at this, we've got our stunts and our fashion. Other than John doing some of the flatbed flying, I don't think there's any real other stunts. There was one thing I noticed, and I'll be damned for the life of me. This is something I'm very confused at, because the CBS commercial they did for the premiere of Shazam and ISIS, or maybe it wasn't even the premiere, but it was like showing the lineup of all the Saturday morning fare that CBS had.
See stars shine on CBS Saturday. See Pebbles, Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner, Scooby-Doo, Shazam and ISIS, Space Nuts, Ghostbusters, Valley of the Dinosaurs, Bad Albert, the Children's Film Festival.
And they include Shazam and ISIS. Clearly there's Joanna Cameron as ISIS. There's a shot of Captain Marvel landing on a truck. And in the commercials, it looks like Jackson. But watching the episode now, I can see, because based on the truck, I'm like, no, wait a minute, that's got to be John, right? I mean...
Yes, it is.
John was not... Jackson was not involved in any part of this episode, was he?
No, not at all. He was not involved at all. That was John landing. I saw that very commercial you're talking about. And for the benefit of our podcast audience, you can go on YouTube and look at that CBS premiere of different lineups. And there was such a quick flash where John's landing into the back of the bed of that truck wearing the Captain Marvel suit. And it's so quick that you think that it could be the other actor, but it's not.
Yeah, because that thing, it's so quick, and it's a little grainy. It's YouTube and all and such, but clearly you can see on the DVDs here now that it's like, oh no, that's definitely a scene from this episode with John Davey.
And our minds play tricks on us. We have to go by the facts of what we know from the records. That apparently this was a second season episode that aired after Jackson's one of his episodes, or both of his episodes, and then the Debbie episode aired, which was, I think, John's first episode he shot, and then this episode. As my child mind, I have a false memory that this was the first episode of the second season. I remember seeing it and not recognizing who the actor was, and I thought it was this episode, not the Debbie episode, but this one. So it aired. It's on September 27th, 1975, but it's entirely possible that I didn't see the last couple of weeks of Shazam at all, and this is the first time I've seen it. And so I was wondering, who is this new actor playing the part? I went along with it because I knew this was make-believe and pretend. That the illusion wasn't quite there anymore, because here you got a new actor, and it kind of destroys the suspension of disbelief. I've said it before, the illusion wasn't quite there, but I knew this was make-believe and it was pretend, and I knew that there were such things as different actors playing different parts. I do have that memory of seeing him for the first time in this episode.
Right. And the fashion, to me, nothing really stood out that was special on that.
Lots of cowboy stuff.
I guess, yeah. I guess. I don't know. It did not... So far, when it comes to Shazam... for the second season, the clothing hasn't been all that interesting. We've seen some interesting stuff on ISIS, but not here as much.
We've seen Western-style clothing on Shazam before, as I recall.
Yeah, that's true.
And Western-style clothing is also another staple of 1970s television shows. I don't know if you caught that. You see a lot of that on $6 Million Man, and you see that in Bionic Woman. You see that on The Incredible Hulk. A lot of Western-themed episodes with cowboy hats and Western gear and attire, and an occasional horse in the episodes. We have a horse in this episode.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's a lot of rural type settings for a lot of the episodes. Yes,
that's true. A lot of rural settings.
Yeah,
and I don't know, John, if that was in. that constant theme of seeing a lot of rural-themed episodes that we saw in those previously mentioned television shows of the 70s, was that geared deliberately by corporate execs to appeal to middle America? I don't know. I really don't.
I kind of have a theory about that, actually, now that you mention. Well, because you figure we're coming off of the 1960s and the obsession with rural comedies. Petticoat Junction, Andy Griffith, Gomer Pyle, Green Acres, where to a certain extent the rural folks are nice and they're civilized in the sense of, they're down home and all, but they're a little odd. And we have laughs at their expense. So my thinking is that then you come into the 70s, and in some ways this is almost like a way of making it up.
That might be true.
Yeah.
That might be true, but a lot of rural people enjoyed Hee Haw, and that was a very popular rural type show. And you see like I said, a lot of rural themed episodic television, even on Shazam. But I'm glad that Shazam did not take pot shots at anybody who lived differently than mainstream people. They never made fun of anybody who was different.
No.
But on The Incredible Hulk, they sure did. Well. They made fun of every rural hick you can ever think of, John. Oh, they insulted a whole part of Middle America. I don't know. I like Kenny Johnson, but what did his writers and he have to do? What did they have against rural people for it?
I don't know.
We'll return after these messages.
Where you going, Susie?
To spend the night at Kathy's.
Bet you're excited.
A little scared, too, Milton. I've never slept away from home.
That's only natural. I was nervous my first night here.
Really?
Sure. I didn't know if you'd like Kellogg's Pop-Tarts, but you did. Especially all that real fruit filling and delicious frosting.
Milton, did you ever stay at a friend's house?
Nope. Couldn't find an extension cord long enough. There's a lot of good inside Kellogg's Pop-Tarts toaster pastries.
The people at Loblaws believe that a great deal on something you don't want is no deal at all. That's why Loblaws weekly specials are on everyday items. Check these out.
Swift Sugar Plum Semi-Bonus Whole Cooked Smoked Hams, only $1.32 per pound. And Weston's Brown and Serve Rolls in packages of 12, just 33 cents each. Loblaws reserves the right to limit quantities.
Weekly specials, another reason to come on over to Loblaws. No matter where you've been shopping, come on over.
And now, back to Shazam.
Today's story was about how Kelly learned that one must respect the law. Respecting the law is just another way of saying that we respect each other. Laws have been made for the good of everyone. And when someone breaks the law, he's really saying, I don't care about you. So next time you see a sign that reads, keep off the grass, or a red light that says stop, be sure you obey it. When you respect the law, you're respecting yourself.
So in this lesson, the moral, Billy once again gives the moral. We notice that it's not John Davy, it's not Jackson giving the moral. It's got to be Michael Gray this time as Billy.
Right.
And I'm guessing that he's probably standing outside of CBS studios or Filmation studios, if you look at the background. It's a great moral, and I agree with it. But Captain Marvel in the comic book would never allow himself to be confined behind bars. There is a old Shazam story from the 1940s that was remade in the giant size 1975 or 76 coloring book, oversized coloring book. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's another form of double trouble where an imposter picked up by Dr. Savannah is transformed to look like Captain Marvel and commits robberies. So kind of like this episode, Double Trouble, Captain Marvel's accused of a crime he did not commit, and he gets arrested and thrown in jail. And Captain Marvel says, you're not going to keep me here, and flies and busts his way out of the bars. Different story, different theme.
Yeah.
And so by the time that story comes to a conclusion, Captain Marvel finds the imposter and exposes him.
Yeah.
But obviously that kind of a story would not translate well to a TV episode. It's not just because of the budget limitation. It's because you don't want to see... It's like turning the other cheek. You want to see someone take a wrong, even though you don't want them in jail, but it's appropriate to say that an innocent person has to bear going to jail and suffering an inconvenience in hopes that justice will prevail at the end.
Exactly.
Is that the underlying real moral of this episode, or is it simply say just obey the law and keep off the grass?
Well, I think it is, like you say, and it sort of leads to my question, does this episode hold up? And it's another reason why I think this is one of the stronger, if not one of the strongest entries of the episodes of Shazam, is because now more than ever, the whole message holds up today. We've got so many people in this world, and I'm not even talking about rich fat cats. We're talking about just everyday average people who think they are above the law. Because even if the law is a dumb one, you need to obey it. And there are ways of going about changing the law, but you don't rebel against it. Because if you do that, what's the point then of having law and order in our world? You might as well just leave it at, let's just hand out the 6 guns and start shooting everybody. I've gotten issues with people, and I'm going to take a moment here and just be a little controversial. There was that whole case with the man who was choked in New York City a year or 2 back because they were trying to arrest him at the time, all because he was selling loose cigarettes on the street corner. And the cop was totally out of line. I mean, and this is the problem. We're evading the issue here because everybody, the moment you bring up the fact that, well, he was resisting arrest, and it's like, well, he didn't deserve to die. No, he didn't deserve to. No. And that cop who put the chokehold on him needs to, he needed to have his time also in court for what he did. He was out of line. But the fact that this young man wouldn't accept arrest because he knew he was doing something illegal, and even then he had the attitude as he's like, you're always on my case, and it's like, well, you're always standing here on a corner selling loose cigarettes, which is against the law. Are there better things maybe the cops could be doing? Again, that's another matter, but the fact was he was out there in an open street breaking the law openly. And you can't have that. You just can't do something like that. And that's what gets me, is that there are just so many people today, and it's hard for me as a teacher in a school to try and get these kids to understand that rules, even the ones we have in the school, regardless of how dumb some of them may be, and there are some really dumb rules in my school, but they're there for a reason and they need to be obeyed. That's how you have an equal citizenship in this country, is if everybody follows the law and does not feel they're above it.
Yeah, that's true. Like when I went to parochial school as a kid, I had to wear the uniform.
Right.
And I didn't want to, okay? It destroyed my individuality. But if I didn't show up wearing the appropriate attire that was expected in the uniform, I would be sent home. Right. So that's why I love being an adult where we can break the law with impunity, right, John? Just don't. That undoes everything you just said. Yeah, you're right.
But that's the problem. It's just, I like, all right, personally, I think maybe it might be a better thing if marijuana was made legal. Not that I'm saying this is that I'm a smoker or anything like that. Maybe it would be better. Maybe things would be easier. But the fact is, the law is you do not smoke marijuana. We do not sell it. We do not deal in it. We do not possess it. It is an illegal substance. And yet there are plenty of people who feel it is, because it is a stupid law, I'm just going to do what I want. And I'm going to break that law. And then when they're caught, then comes all the crying. And it's like, we don't want to follow the law. We don't want to take the consequences. It's very, very, frustrating to see. And again, I come back to, then what's the point of the law? Then if you're not going to, you want to hold the cop to the law, who was, and absolutely should, but you also have to hold even for the smallest infractions. Now, mind you, here in New York, since then, a lot of what they call, I think the program's called broken windows, where basically, because the idea was catch the person who breaks the windows, you will stop how it will escalate into worse crimes. They're starting to ignore simple offenses like urinating on the street. If I want to walk up to a tree and urinate on the street, as long as on that tree, as long as I'm not totally exposing myself, go right ahead, knock yourself out.
Well, I never thought that I would hear any analogy where John hypothetically would urinate on a tree on an episode of Shazam ISIS podcast, folks. This is a first.
Oh, I'll tell you, this episode really makes you think about the law and where it stands. And, like you say, okay, in the comic book, Captain Marvel's like, no way. But here, to me, Cap does the right thing. He turns himself in. He doesn't go above the law and say, I'll deal with this. Never you mind the rest of you. It's to me, he does the right thing. And it is, as you also point out, it is as a risk. You have to you're taking your chances with the system. But that's the only way this system works. Otherwise, we fall into chaos.
That's true. Although, technically, Billy and Captain Marvel weren't really the same person. I'm trying to rationalize here. You could have become Captain Marvel on Monday and then turn himself in on Monday.
Oh, sure. Billy could have gone off and just did the investigating himself, and that could have been the whole thing. But again, we had the other little story with Kelly, and so Marvel has to practice what he preaches.
That's true. And I really like the fact that the show does it in every episode. They did go out of the way to show a moral, and they did go out of the way to show that the laws have to be respected. And I think this really does hold up. This really does hold up as an episode, and it's among my favorite of the second season, one of my favorites in the entire series. And really, I hate to take another swipe at Scooby-Doo again, but they would constantly break the law on that show. How many times did they trespass on property, okay?
Right. True.
And how many doobies did Shaggy smoke, okay?
Oh, man.
You can't tell me that Shaggy and Scoopy were above the law. But, oh, boy, that's another issue. No, I think this show holds up here. What would you rate it, John?
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, holy molies, I would definitely give this a 5. In my opinion, it's definitely one of the best, if not the best, in the series so far. Honest to God, I just really, really love it, and I can't say. See, this is the thing. As a kid, I can't remember, but for some reason, there's some sort of vague memory. Like, I could put my finger on this episode and go, yeah, I forgive you for getting rid of my Captain Marvel. As a kid. This episode did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree this is a great story. It had a good twist at the very beginning, and it was very original for the second season. I'd give it 5 out of 5 holy molies. There was a lot of action packed in that first act.
Yeah.
And it was a good script overall. The dialogue was good, and the moral is good. And I have seen this, of all the second season episodes, I probably have rewatched this one more than the rest of them.
All right, so there you go. Another 5 here. We're doing well here for the second season.
So far we are. I think that this is an example of how the show was taken up a few notches also.
Right. Exactly. So next time, though, we're not doing Shazam. We're going back to ISIS because it was the Shazam ISIS hour. So we're going to cover now the next episode in that hour that aired then. We're back to ISIS, and it's a really interesting tale as a student steals a force field generator in the episode The Sounds of Silence.
And that's going to be a really exciting one. I think we're going to have fun with that one too, John.
I think so too. And that's like one of those ones that, again, stands out as a kid, that I remember that one vividly because it was like, ooh, force field generator. This should be good. So, folks, make sure you're heading on over to ShazamIsisPodcast.com, checking out the Facebook page, and writing us at ShazamIsisPodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing with the show. Richard and I are trying to work out a few other details in terms of some future interviews with some people who were involved in both shows and also in some peripheral things regarding both shows. So hopefully we'll be able to have those coming along shortly as well. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Richard, take care.
Take care, Mentor John.